I am an absolute sucker for a fast, fun, and approachable family weight card game. Not only are they great to play with your family, or maybe while you're waiting on more players to show up to game night, or at the end of a game night when everyone's slap happy and tired, but you still want to get in at least one more game. Or for family gatherings, where maybe some of the people there aren't as familiar with modern board and card games. And these are great games, and I love games like these that you can introduce to people who aren't familiar with modern board and card games and kind of get them into the hobby. But enough yapping already. Let's take a look at 3 card games that are hitting my table right now that I absolutely love. And I suspect you will like them too. And here they are in no particular order. Let's take a look at Wine Cellar. Wine Cellar is a bidding/drafting game for 1 to 8 players. Yes, you can play this game by yourself or up to a whopping 8 players. And it really plays just fine at all those play counts. It's a lot of fun. So players will receive a hand of 8 wines. And then there will be a number of wine cards in the center of the table equal to the number of players. And here's one of the best parts about the game is players will look at their hand and then they will all simultaneously select a card. So everyone's kind of planning out their turn at the same time. So there's very little downtime in this game despite the number of players. And then once all the players have selected a card, everyone reveals their cards, and then in order from the highest bid, which is this number in the upper left-hand corner of the cards, players will then select one of the available cards from the center of the table and add it to their cellar, which is basically your own personal collection of wine bottles that you're collecting to try to get the largest point value by the end of the game. So this player might choose this one, this player over here might choose that card, this player over here might choose that card. Now the cards that we secretly chose to bid with, those now become the new cards in the display that we will bid on next turn. And here's where the game gets interesting, is after you've collected your first wine card, all the other wine cards that you get either have to be added to the bottom of it or added to the top. So you can never get a wine card and tuck it somewhere in between. You have to add it as the bottommost wine or as the topmost wine. And this will greatly affect your scoring at the end of the game. So if we fast forward to the end of the game, my wine collection might look something like this. So each one of the wine bottles has 8 different numbers on it, and you will collect 8 wine bottles over the course of a game. Bottle that you have at the very top will score points equal to the number that is in the first square. The next bottle down will score the points in the second square. The next bottle down will score the points in the third square, and so on and so forth. So when you're drafting these cards, you're trying to put them in the optimal position to try to get the greatest value from each bottle. And in addition to the points from your wine cellar, at the beginning of the game you will have received 2 of these client cards. You would select one of them to keep, discard the other one, and these client cards will give you additional points at the end of the game. They will give you additional points for the different wine types, and they will also give you additional points for the country of origin. So in addition to just looking at the point values on the bottles themselves, you also need to consider what your clients want as well in order to best your friends at Wine Cellar. And that's Wine Cellar in a nutshell. Wine Cellar is certainly fast, fun, and easy to teach. The game has an absolute beautiful look to it. The art is done by Vincent Dutray, who is one of my favorite board game artists. Everything about the game is just beautiful and elegant. The rules are easy to teach. Players can begin playing almost immediately, and a good chunk of the game is played simultaneous, where players are selecting their card, flipping them over, getting your new cards and adding them to your wine cellar, and the game does play in about 20 minutes. So there's really no reason not to go ahead and play it a couple of times. The card quality is nice. It comes with a score pad and a pre-sharpened pencil, and I think the theme in this game will really help it go over well with a wider audience, because despite if you partake or enjoy wine, I feel like players who maybe don't play a lot of card games will find this theme a little more welcoming and inviting than maybe dragons and dinosaurs fighting space aliens. But it is a very fun puzzle, and I feel like there's just enough complexity in the game to make it interesting. However, it's not overwhelming at all. You get those client cards, they can give you extra points at the end of the game, and I feel like they kind of gently push each player in a direction. So maybe you're trying to get a specific type of wine from a specific country of origin. So you're trying to balance that along with the age scores on them as well. So very approachable, very fun game, doesn't outstay its welcome. That is Wine Cellar. Next is 3-2-1 Countdown by Grandpa Beck Games. 3-2-1 Countdown is a hand shading game for 2 to 8 players. And basically you're just trying to get rid of the cards in your hand until the value of your cards is equal to 5 or less. The rules are super simple. On a player's turn, they must discard one or more matching cards to one of the 2 discard piles. So in this case, maybe I'll discard these 2 7s over there. And I could either draw from the top of the deck or draw from the other discard pile. In this case, I will draw from the other discard pile because that was a 6 and I already had a few 6s in my hand. So come next turn, I can discard all 4 of these 6s to get rid of that. Now my hand is already getting pretty slim. The only thing that sucks though is I have a bunch of high cards in my hand right now. Because what you're attempting to do in 3-2-1 Countdown is to get the total value of cards in your hand to be 5 or less. So one way that a round can end is if a player is able to discard all their cards from their hand because they all match. So say I had these 3 7s and I discard them, I would call Blast Off. That ends the round immediately. All players reveal the cards that they have left, and the player who called Blast Off gets 3 points, then the next player with the lowest total value in their hand will receive 2 points, and then the next lowest total value of cards will score 1 point. Or if at the beginning of a player's turn, they have a total of 5 or less in their hand, say a 4 and a 1, I could call Countdown. That ends the round and all players reveal their hand of cards. Then the player with the lowest total value of cards gains 3 points, next lowest 2 points, next lowest 1 point, and if the player that called Countdown has the lowest value of cards, they gain 1 bonus point. However, if the player that called Countdown doesn't have the lowest value of cards, they actually get nothing. They score 0 points. So it kind of has a pressure luck element when calling Countdown, because if you don't have the lowest value, you're gonna get kind of screwed over. But after 5 rounds, players tally up their scores and the player with the highest score is the victor. And that is 3-2-1 Countdown in a nutshell. Grandpa Beck Games makes a ton of really good family weight card games. And a lot of times their games will be twists on card games that you're already familiar with. And a lot of them just downright feel like classic card games, but better. And much prettier. And speaking of beauty, I absolutely love the aesthetic of 3-2-1 Countdown. I totally dig the retro look of all the spaceship cards. It just looks so awesome. But 3-2-1 Countdown plays quickly and it's super easy to teach, probably the easiest game to teach of this bunch. The box says 15 to 30 minutes of play. I would say it's probably closer to that 30 minutes per game. Even though you only play 5 rounds, it does give an option at higher player counts if you want to just play 3 rounds for a shorter game. I really love the push your luck element of this game. Sometimes you might be drawing higher cards that kind of suck, but maybe you already have a few 10s in your hand. So now you got a whole bunch of 10s that you can get rid of a bunch of them at once. The only thing that could suck though is if you suspect another player might be getting close to calling Countdown or Blast Off, you're just picking up even higher number of cards to ensure that you're not gonna get any points. So there's kind of a pressure luck element there. And you're also kind of pressing your luck too when you end the round by calling Countdown. Because if you don't have the lowest value of cards in your hand, you're not gonna get jack squat, and that totally sucks. But during the game, you can feel this tension around the table when all the players start getting really low hands of cards. And then play will come back around to you, and you have a value of 5 in your hand. And you're thinking, do I do it? Do I call Countdown in hopes that I have the lowest sum? Oh, who knows what to do. Or maybe you had 2 2s and a 1. So maybe you lay down those 2 2s and then wait for it to come back around, and then you only have 1. But then what if you wait and someone else just calls Blast Off and they get rid of their whole hand? But no matter what happens, there always seems to be an explosion of emotions when somebody calls Countdown or Blast Off. Typically players groaning like, oh, I was so close. But either way, it's always a ton of fun, and I certainly recommend 3-2-1 Countdown. And I certainly recommend taking 3-2-1 Countdown to some of your family gatherings this year. I'd like to pause for just a moment and mention that these were review copies provided by the publishers. However, the thoughts and opinions on these games are my own. And last and certainly not least, we have Clans and Glory. Clans and Glory is a card game for 2 to 4 players. Players will receive a hand of cards, and on their turn, they will play one of their cards to one of these meeting places. There's a different number of meeting places depending on the number of players in the game. Here I have the game set up for 2 players, but the game plays great at 2, 3, and 4 players. So each one of these meeting places has 6 slots, if you will, for cards to go into. So on a player's turn, they will simply add one of their cards to one of the slots at one of the meeting places. However, there are some rules to what cards you can place where. The card that you played has to either be across from or beside a card that matches its clan/color or its rank, the number. So I could place this yellow 3 here because it is across from another 3. Or I could have placed it over here because it's beside another yellow card. But in addition to playing a card, you may also place one of your shields at that meeting place. So say I played this purple 5 here, I could add one of my shields to that location. And that is how you're gonna score points. And the way you score points in this game is so bizarre and unique. It's my favorite thing about this game. Actually, it is the whole game. It's super cool. So check this out. So let's say it's the end of the game and the table looks like this. You go to each one of the meeting places and score. At each location, you'll take the stack of shields, turn it upside down, and then whichever disc is on the top, that player gains all of the lowest value card. So in this case, the white player would get all of these 3s because those were the lowest value cards there. And then the white player was the next top one, so then they would get the next lowest value card, which would be this single 4. Then the black player would get the next lowest card, but there's no cards left, so they get diddly squat. So then we move on to the next one. Again, flip the stack of shields over. The white player is going to get the lowest value cards. That is a 4. So the white player is going to get a 4. Then they'll get the next lowest, which is the 5s. So they get all of these 5s here. And then the black player gets the next lowest. They get a 6. So then over here, we flip all of the shields over. The black player is gonna get the lowest. They got this 1, 4. And then the white player is gonna get the next lowest, which is all of them. Then the players just tally up the cards that they've taken, and the player with the most victory points is the winner. And that's Clans and Glory in a nutshell. Unfortunately, Clans and Glory will only play up to 4 players. But it is a very fun and enjoyable game. Disclaimer though, this game can feel a little mean at times. When you lay a card down and you add a shield to that meeting location, it can really throw things off a lot. So this game is interesting because it is extremely easy to teach how to play. But you really do need to give new players an example of exactly how the scoring works, because it is very bizarre that basically the first chip that gets there is going to take all of the lowest number. And then the next chip that gets there is going to take the next lowest number. So you can kind of poison the well, so to speak, by playing cards in locations that are low when another player has already put one of their shields there. Say they think they're gonna get 4 6s because there's only 4 6s at a meeting location. So then you roll up in there and you throw a 3 on there because that 3 happened to match the color of one of those 6s, and then you put your chip on top. So now their chip is on the bottom, they're gonna get that single 3, and now you're gonna get all those 6s. So this game almost feels like a game of chicken that you're playing with your friends at the table. It is so much fun, but it's a strange game of chicken where nobody wants to play any of their cards because they're afraid of what will happen when they play their cards. But you have to play your cards, and that's what makes it so fun. And the thing with the chips, a lot of times you're kind of hesitant to play your chips too, but if you don't play your chips and the game ends, then you don't score anything, so you have to play your chips. Well, shields, I keep calling them chips. I must be hungry. I may have just implied it, but multiple players can stack as many chips as they like on a meeting location, just to clear up any confusion. But the game plays wonderful with 2, 3, and 4 players. So regardless of how many players you got, this one is gonna be a lot of fun. And the overall production value of this game is quite nice. The tiles for the meeting places are nice and thick, the art on all the cards is cute, and the chips are fun little wooden printed on one side discs that make a mildly satisfying click when you set them on top of someone else's chip. So that is 3 fantastic games to take to your family gatherings this season. But let's throw in a bonus one, Sears Catalog. This is what they call a ladder climbing game. Players are trying to get rid of their hand of cards, and they'll be doing so by playing matching cards or runs. But there are some artifact cards and interesting scoring that make this one unique. Definitely check out Sears as well. And as always, thank you for watching another episode of Rolling with the Beard. Thomas Jefferson's coming home.